once again, my name is and as I said, my background was business, and then pulled into this business analytics world, and then that pushed me into databases, science, and analytics tools, and then subsequently programming languages, and now I work as a education specialist. The leap was the point I realized that the tools and the skills, the data science skills, were really great for selling toothpaste. But then if you cut and paste them into all kinds of environments, they still work. So the statistics and the math is relevant regardless of what industry you're in. So that gave me the confidence, I suppose, to start my company, Fireside Analytics, because that was traditional consulting, or it was intended to be traditional consulting. So, Brooke, if you have a data set and you want someone to it, and I thought I might be cheaper than some of the big firms, that was sort of my elevator. And it worked for a bit, and then very early on, I got requests to create educational programming. So, hey, Shingai, the analysis is great, but can you share a bit about how you did it? Can you HR analysts, that sort of thing? And then I saw the opportunity in technical education, so I started developing online courses, and worked with IBM. They've got a platform called cognitiveclass.ai. And together, of the courses that I created, they have over 450,000 registered learners. So very decent effort results with the startup. And then more recently, I started at the Vector Institute because they were in the same boat. They were trying to develop technical education, but for artificial intelligence practitioners and for organizations that wanted to increase the AI adoption. So that's did. And so I joined the team, and now I create courses in AI.
You're able to influence almost 500,000 people.
Yeah, it's incredible and unbelievable. I think it's the one time that I think about it is when somebody drops a note in on LinkedIn and says, "Hi Shingai, I just took your course," or "Hi Shingai, I know you from the IBM course," and that happens all the time. And then the best ones are, "Hi Shingai, I'm thinking about taking a job with such and such company. Should I do it?" which is for asking advice from a stranger on the internet. But it's a really good sign because it means that folks were able to take some learnings from those courses and get some value from them.
All right, we've got our first question from the audience from Rajiv. Rajiv wants to know, who are your inspirations on how to craft technical education? Do you see issues with the current way of teaching, and how would you like to change it?
So much about this. Hello, thanks for the question. All right, the first big thing that, and I could talk for hours on this one, is the disciplinary approaches to education. So I find specifically with this technical area, you have to say, or you have to come from an engineering background, you have to come from a math background, you have to come from a computer science background. That's the only way you can work in AI. And that's just not true. And in fact, even the whole AI industry is desperate for people who have technical skills, but who also bring other domains to the fore. So, I mean, just one classic example is legal or ethics and bias, social sciences. All of those who study this, right, could really help us in terms of some of the models, algorithms that we're developing to address some of the with those. So that's like one of the biggest things that I feel very strongly about. I find sometimes we exclude people. So it's human nature, but sometimes we exclude people because there's the idea that it's only people who have computer science PhDs that can participate, and that's just not sort of part one of the questions, some of the challenges with traditional education. Some of the challenges are it's very difficult to measure ROI for technical training. One of the other questions I get is, Shingai, why should I pay for this? I could just take a free course, or it's all on YouTube. And the simple answer is that, hey, if you want to take it on YouTube, do that. But there's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry for education because people need sometimes different styles of learning. Sometimes you need an instructor. Sometimes you need somebody to walk you through the stuff. Some people are happy to just read a textbook and they're done. So cater for all those different types of learning styles certainly the way I approach it through case studies is, we can come up with ways that can help people learn. And we're doing better at that now. I think the traditional cookie cutter, this is what we're teaching, and if you don't get it, you get a low mark and you're out. I think we're evolving a little bit past that and finding students who are actually brilliant at, let's say, computer programming, but may not have come through channels. So those are some of the challenges that I see, and I think we're starting to address them slowly but surely. Let me see if I've got all of that right, Rajiv. My in technical education. So actually it's a combination. My father's an entrepreneur and my mom's an educator. So I am really just the two. And the fact that I ended up being a data scientist has just, think of it as like falling in a river and then the river takes you in a direction. That's kind of what happened to me. I'd say my parents, and especially my mom, because her care for making sure that people, like, she really cared about learning as opposed to, oh, take the test and you're done. All right.
You already preemptively answered the question from Manal about, do you think a PhD degree is a requirement to be working in the ML and AI field? So in that case, let's go ahead and go to Grekon. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Your question. It is, what is your favorite part about your job and what has been a challenge?
Okay, so let me tell you first about the work that I'm doing as a technical education specialist at the Vector Institute. So I'd say the biggest challenge, let me describe it first. So Vector Institute has AI researchers, many of whom are PhDs or pursuing PhDs. And Manal, actually, maybe just to touch on your question, is there are many reasons for people doing PhD. So you'll find the folks at the Vector Institute want to delve deeper into a particular area of modeling or of artificial intelligence, of neural networks, of computer vision, NLP, whatever, right? So they have a particular view and they want to analyze and really get close to a particular area. So there are many reasons for doing a PhD. You can work in the sector without a PhD, but this particular group of people and the Vector Institute this is what they do. Right, so bring together PhDs, PhD students, faculty affiliates, etc., in order to do that work. And then I'm supposed to find out what they're working on and then translate it and package it into a format that industry can absorb, right? So the primary way to do it is creating a course. So, if we know that one of our, this is a classic example, one of our researchers at Vector, he's doing research on quantum computing, and he's using neural networks to simulate how, the effects of quantum computing. Very exciting. So knowing that, you can start to think about how can we pull that into content that can be absorbed by industry? How can we even communicate that to industry so they see the opportunities of what's possible with the research that he's doing, right? So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, which is with some success, and it's very exciting. I think the struggles are constantly jumping, wearing different hats. So one day I am a data scientist and I actually have to look at the assignment and look at the code and make sure that the code that's in the assignment makes sense and it all comes together. Sometimes I have to look at things that I do very well. So obviously the universe is unknowable, right? There's too much to know. And I have a sense of certain areas of quantum computing, but I'm not a researcher in the field. So I still have to make judgment calls with what I know and have confidence. We take this, the researcher is going to come through to the missing pieces, and we can translate it into education that can be absorbed by industry. That is difficult. And I think you have to be very secure about yourself and what you know and what you don't know. And I'm not to be an AI engineer because that's not who I am. I need to know I'm a technical education specialist, and in my role, I can always get somebody to plug in certain holes of information, knowledge, etc. So I hope I answered that question.
Awesome job with that response. Next one, this is a question very near to heart. How do we teach AI developers and data scientists about social constructs, including race, gender, and intersectionality? They have a hard time understanding how these issues impact the systems that they are developing.
Amazing question, and keeps today I've had maybe 3 conversations All right, so the first thing is, and it comes back to our education systems, right? So think about, cast your mind back to when you were at university, and typically undergraduate, or even your master's programs, if you got that far, you have a certain set, and this is what's in the curriculum. Maybe you have an elective and you make choices about the electives, and you can get your entire degree, let's say it's an engineering degree, without ever taking an ethics course. And then fast forward, you now become an artificial intelligence practitioner. Where are we expecting that knowledge to come from, right? So one of the things that I'm very passionate about is creating modules, educational modules that folks can take off the shelf and say, hey, I don't have that. So I should know about bias, and I should know about the of bias in algorithms. Here's a module that I can take that's into the knowledge I don't have. And also getting really good at, the universities in Canada that do artificial intelligence, get a list of their curricula to be able to say, okay, you guys cover ethics here, you don't cover ethics here, you guys don't cover ethics here, and make sure that people come to, certainly at the Vector Institute in that community, that they're able to, that we make sure they get access to that content. This is still theoretical. I'm still building on that program. I'm still building on the module, but I with you on that we need to have that, because it's just not the case. Not everyone's going to arrive at that knowledge on their own. And then one other thing about how to teach it, case studies. So one of the calls that I was in today, actually discussing a new bias program that we're running in February, that I've developed for one of the organizations that we're going to be working with. And okay, so everybody's bought in. Everybody said, yeah, we should do bias. Bias is important. And then I put up a slide of me when I, went into this workshop once in Germany, and there was a facial recognition camera that was supposed to pick up everyone who walked in, and then it would have your gender and your age, approximate age, with some probability of correct. I walked in, absolutely didn't see me. So it saw my colleagues, even way behind me, but I just was visible to this screen. So I actually put up that slide. I said, listen, this is what's at stake. Learning about bias is now a risk mitigation strategy. You don't get to just say it's nice to have. It is critical, right? You don't want to find out about this when your app, when Black people can't use your app, which has happened. So I think using those examples and getting very granular with actual examples is something that could help get people to really understand it.
There's an excellent paper, I'm not sure if you've read it, called Data Sheets for Data by Timnit Gebru.
Okay, no, that doesn't sound familiar.
I'll post a link to it in the chat. It's an excellent paper. Her whole thing is about how we can reduce bias in machine learning. And her argument is that we need to be documenting the data, how we collected it, what are the assumptions about the data, how can it be used, how should it not be used? Because things like ImageNet, which a lot of our image classifiers are trained off of, 97% of the images are taken from the Western world. So it doesn't apply well when you're trying to do like transfer learning to a bride in India, because brides in India look very different from brides in the States. So yeah, it's an awesome paper. I'll drop a link.
Thank you, please do. And just a fun one for those of you that are on the call, if you can pull out your phone or type it in your browser and just your search engine of choice. I'm not even going to tell you which one to use, and type in the words beautiful face, right? So whip out in your search engine of choice and just type in the words beautiful face. And then you tell me, firstly, are you represented in images? And then if you are, who's not, right? And what you might find is that very homogeneous perspectives of what beauty is. Beautiful face. It's, could be anything, but you get a specific set of results. And that speaks to algorithms, particularly the area that needs work in terms of diversity.
I see a lot of women stroking their face as well.
Yeah. Oh, did you check it?
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Also, feel free to come on camera. If you request it, I can approve it.
Yeah, Ushnish says you have direct lived experience of facial recognition. Would you do me a favor in your organization, or if you get speaking opportunities in different places, document that and then share it as part of your presentation. It could be like, even if your presentation has nothing to do with it, just make it the last slide because as soon as people start to really see it as, you know, a physical manifestation as opposed to a theoretical, we know it's important, and that does in terms of getting people to really think, oh, no, we have to relook our model, and we have to read about what bias might be in it.
All right, while we're waiting for questions from the audience, I have a question for you.
Yes.
This is a very common people when they first try to get into the industry is imposter syndrome. Have you experienced that? And if so, how do you overcome it?
Yes, of course, of course. I work at an artificial intelligence institute. Of course, imposter syndrome. I work with really smart people, and firstly, it's a gift. Hi, Ushish. I think you're gonna jump in and tell us something in a moment. I was just chatting about imposter syndrome. I think it's just part of the deal. And I think the thing that gets me going is sometimes, if not me, then who? If it's not, so if I say that, oh, I don't feel I should be speaking at this conference, I don't feel like I should be presenting or whatever. If it's not me, then who? And then at some point, when I talk about, you know, diversity, we don't have enough diversity in the organization. If I'm not stepping up to say, I'll do the presentation, I'll facilitate the meeting, I'll do whatever it is, then at some point I also have to take a bit of ownership there. And because if I can put up my hand, and I should be doing that. So two things. Part of the deal. I think everybody has moments of insecurity about a bunch of things. If it's not you, then who? And then make the decision that you just gotta keep moving forward. And one last little point on imposter syndrome is back it with skills, right? So our insecurities come from the, ooh, maybe I'm not who they think I am, or I don't have the skills they think I have. You have to make sure you have the skills and you back the claims and the stuff on your resume, so that you're not an imposter, right? You really did do the things and you really do have the skills. All right, Ushnish, you were gonna tell us your lived experience, I think?
No, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, more like a question I was asking to the bigger group. In terms of diversity and AI development teams, like there's a lot of science that says like the diversity helps reduce the bias and has better outcomes. But I see so many examples of AI developing teams with people of color, with women, with the same bias results. And I know just, you know, being a person of color doesn't automatically make me a conscious person about all these issues, right? So how, what is your experience on the diversity of teams and the kind of resultant outcomes and so on? Yeah, that was my question.
That is a great question. And two ways to look at it. The first one is just based on data alone. There have been a couple of exciting reports, and I think McKinsey's come out with probably the most cited one about how organizations that are more diverse get better. And they've looked at it from level, they've looked at it from a soft, the arrows point in the same direction, that people with more diverse teams tend to perform better. The organization perform better. So that's step number one. Step number two, I think bias or addressing bias is a separate action. It's not a checkbox. So I do think your team as a risk mitigation strategy is a good start, but it's not just going to happen on its own, right? The model is still the model, right? Unless you have active steps in place to try and address bias, then you're not. It's not going to itself. So I think that maybe the deliberateness of actively trying to make changes is what's missing. Having the people is not enough. And I think the using women as the example is the point where there was a changeover from the Mad Men style meeting to we now have women in the boardroom. It wasn't enough, right? Those women were empowered, or if there was a traditional culture that was persistent in the organization, just having them, yes, was a great step, but the organization had to be very deliberate about, okay, we are changing our culture to be inclusive, to hear different perspectives, and to follow them and to listen to them. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Who else have we got?
I speak up. All right, so I have a question for you. Oh, looks like we've got Van who has a question instead. Hey, Van.
Hi. Sorry. Okay. So I work in Silicon Valley and in tech industry. And there's a small, at least for women or underrepresented URM. There's a small percentage of us, and I think there's a movement of trying to make a more diverse workforce. And I don't know, like, and that's a lot of work to be done. I don't know where to start, but it's like, what is a good way? How do we make that change happen in a place like Silicon Valley? I don't know. It's a big question.
So the journey of 1,000 steps 1,000 miles begins with one step. That's the saying. So look, you posed your question as trying to change Silicon Valley, and that's a tough question for me to answer. That's a tough question for you to answer. But maybe your capacity in your role, are there steps that you could take your team, the leadership in your organization, to try and get to try and advance the conversation? So I can maybe share some of the initiatives that we have with at the Vector Institute. So I actually co-chair the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion committee. Firstly, we're working on it. So we know that there's a challenge with diversity in AI, and I don't want somebody to post a comment or say, well, true. No, we know that there's an issue, and that's why there's been a committee established, and some of the steps that we're taking are as follows. One, really trying to get the heart of the process. So how does the process take place that results in the bias or the lack of diversity in a group? And processes cover all aspects of an organization. One small example is, so in order to get money for anything at Vector Institute, you need to write a business case, right? And it's a bit of a joke that, the business case, but you got to write a business case. And now embedding somewhere in that business case document, or whatever initiative you're looking for funding for, is going to address equity, diversity, and inclusion, forces the person to have to think about it. So it stops being, Van's job. She's, Van's the one who's going to come and tell us about EDI. No, it's then now embedded as part of the process of an organization. So I think a process view, and I would say start with your sphere of influence, and you perhaps can have a success story. That means you get yourself on stages, get into talks, so you can start talking about, hey, this was the problem, we tried this initiative, we changed the process, we added this clause into the process document, and then we were able to now secure, more diverse speakers at our events. And that spreads the message, and other people learn from the that you've taken. It's a big topic. There are many, it's a very big topic, but I'd say that might be a good place to start. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for thinking about it. I mean, it's a super important topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Correct. Any other questions? Quite a quiet group here.
You're somewhat afraid of going on camera as well. Cool. So how about we'll close out the session with just one piece of advice you want people to take away from your session and from your life experience?
Okay. One piece
if that's
of advice.
possible. Or a collection of tidbits and advice you may have.
Yeah, I like the idea that, your story is your own. I mean, I grew up where I lived in South Africa. I went to university. My master's was in the US, and now that's my story. And then all of you will have a different story, different ways that you came to this profession, different ways that you came to this field of study. Just respect the journey and don't throw it away, because maybe you need a job and you only need to represent this portion of who you are to get that job. I understand that some folks have to do that, but I think if you really consider how to integrate different aspects of what makes you unique into the work that you're specifically in the field of technology, I think that can advance technology in ways that we haven't even considered yet. There are very specific areas that we're focusing on now for innovation, but the actual thing of artificial intelligence into our lives, into our work streams, there's still a long way to go. There's so much we can do and so much potential. But right now we're leaving it to a handful of people to do that. So get involved, right? So, pick up the mantle and respect your own journey. You've got something to contribute. Your particular, the way you see things could be absolutely relevant and pivotal for the next innovations in this field. That's it. That's the message I'd like to leave you with. That's kind of where I'm at. So it's been a prevailing theme, and I think it would be a good place to leave the conversation today.
If you're okay with one last question, someone's requesting to come on video. Or that they just disappeared. Oh, there we go.
Hi,
Hey,
Shingai.
Erica.
I just wanted to say hi. Michelle, do you want to say hi?
Hi, Michelle.
Michelle. I just want to say hi because we connected before, but I wanted to really thank you for saying everything you're saying. My question, I'm just thinking out loud, is just in terms of I'm a non-technical person that has worked with chatbots and will work in AI and machine learning, but I'm thinking a lot about what you're saying is that there needs to be more roles like the UX role, designer role, very consciously in the AI process. And so how do you see that happening in the work that you're doing? Those type of roles, right? That are like the UX function, which do those exist, right? In the ML world. I don't see them as openly as I do in general tech, right? It seems to be the place where I think some of, anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say hi. That was really why I wanted to.
Yeah, thanks for saying hi. And you're 100% correct. Yes, we need, so remember AI adoption, in order for it to be successful, there's so many layers that are involved at an organizational level. 5 people that are running the model that are going to get AI adoption in an organization, right? So the short answer is, right now, we're not there yet in terms of some of these roles. We don't even know what they're called. So I like the example of technical specialist. There's no name. If you look for that job, in fact, when we were discussing what it was going to be, I couldn't even find comparison salaries or roles or job descriptions because it's not a thing. So it might be, Erica, that you have to kick the door down and be the first person to say that I'm a UX AI specialist. Right, you might have to be that person, and then in 5 to 10 time, everybody will be like, oh yeah, it's Erica because she's the one that got our model she got users to experience in a particular way, right? So there's details like that. Pockets of innovation, modeling, and the math. We need you. So you might have to be the first, and you might have to kick down the door to do it, maybe even 20 years time. In 20 years time, it's going to be a staple. That's where we're at right now. But thank you for your enthusiasm. I think keep doing what you're doing. I think you're certainly on the road.
Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to see you on here and you inspire others with that clarity of how you're opening the path for yourself and for others, right? But it needs to continue. And I love that idea of right, creating what doesn't already exist. I've often done that, but we do it in tech, but we don't always do it in every way possible, right? So thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
All right, so I'd love to conclude the session actually with a comment that Daria chat. They say, thank you so much, Shingai. The conversation was really inspirational. Good luck to you with everything. So thank you again for coming and presenting today, Shingai. And thank you for all of the attendees for coming and posting your questions.
Thank you, Brooke, for facilitating. You're great.
Of course. All right, have a good night, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you all are. And thank you again for joining.
Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Bye.